At 2 a.m. this morning, 426 Russian drones and 24 missiles lit up Kyiv's night sky in one of the largest aerial assaults of the war. But the kindergartens, metro stations, and residential buildings Putin targeted reveal something far more sinister than military strategy. While the world focuses on Ukrainian casualties and destroyed buildings, Putin's real target sits thousands of miles away in Brussels, Berlin, and Washington. This isn't just about conquering Ukraine. It's about destroying the foundation of Western democracy itself. But the scale of this deception goes deeper than anyone imagined. Every civilian target, every terror attack, every strike on infrastructure serves a calculated plan to collapse European economies, flood NATO borders with refugees, and force the alliance to spend itself into bankruptcy, defending against an enemy that was never really fighting Ukraine at all. The evidence hiding in plain sight will show you exactly how Putin is using Ukraine as a weapon to attack the heart of NATO itself. The explosion started at 2 a.m. Russian forces launched 426 Shahed drones and 24 missiles in a coordinated assault that lit up Kyiv's night sky like a deadly fireworks display. The high-pitched whine of drone engines echoed through empty streets as air raid sirens wailed across the capital. But Putin didn't target military bases or weapons depots. Instead, his drones struck a kindergarten in the Darnitsky district, setting it ablaze. A supermarket caught fire, warehouse facilities burned. Most shocking of all, a drone exploded next to Lukyanivka metro station while hundreds of civilians sheltered underground. But this wasn't random targeting. According to Reuters, the attack killed 2 people and wounded 15, including a 12-year-old child. Smoke billowed down the metro escalators as terrified families huddled on platforms filled with swirling dust. One resident described it as hell on earth. The pattern is unmistakable. Putin systematically targets civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, power grids, transportation hubs. These aren't military objectives. They're the foundation of civil society itself. But the real target becomes clear when you see NATO's response. Within hours, 4 alliance nations scrambled fighter jets. The attack wasn't designed to defeat Ukraine's military. It was designed to force NATO into an expensive, exhausting defense of European democracy. This is Putin's real invasion strategy, and Ukraine is just the weapon he's using to attack the West. NATO's response was immediate and overwhelming. Polish F-16s took off from northern bases, while Swedish Gripen fighters stationed in Poland joined the operation. Romanian F-16s scrambled at 3:30 a.m. local time, followed by Italian jets launching from Romanian airbases 90 minutes later. The Polish military announced that operations of Polish and Allied aviation have begun, and ground-based air defense and radar reconnaissance systems have reached a state of highest readiness. 4 NATO nations coordinated a real-time military response faster than Russia could track. But this massive mobilization costs money, lots of it. Every scrambled fighter jet burns thousands of dollars in fuel, pilot hours, maintenance, coordination systems, radar operations. Putin's attack just forced NATO to spend millions defending against drones that cost Russia a few $1,000s each. The economic warfare becomes obvious when you examine the numbers. Ukraine's Air Force reported that 23 Russian drones hit their targets out of 426 launched, a 5.4% success rate. But NATO's response was 100% coordinated across multiple nations. But Putin achieved his real objective. He forced the alliance to demonstrate its military capabilities, reveal its response times, and most importantly, spend enormous resources on defense. Every NATO response to Russian attacks drains Western treasuries while costing Russia relatively little. This is asymmetric warfare designed to bankrupt the West through forced military spending, and it's working exactly as Putin planned. The attack on western Ukraine revealed Putin's true strategy. Ivano-Frankivsk, hundreds of miles from the front line, suffered what its mayor called the heaviest attack of the entire war. This city sits practically on NATO's doorstep, close to the Polish and Romanian borders. Putin wasn't targeting military infrastructure in Ivano-Frankivsk. The strikes hit residential buildings and civilian facilities in surrounding villages, injuring several people, including children. The message was clear: nowhere in Ukraine is safe, and by extension, nowhere in Eastern Europe is safe. But the escalation serves a calculated purpose. By attacking regions near NATO borders, Putin forces the alliance to increase defense spending across Eastern Europe. Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states must now defend against attacks that could spill across their borders at any moment. The French foreign minister experienced this firsthand during his visit to Kiev. Jean-Noël Barrot and his embassy staff spent 2 hours hiding during the intense attack, giving European leadership a visceral understanding of the threat they face. But Putin's escalation creates exactly the crisis he wants. European nations must choose between expensive military buildup or accepting that Russian attacks could reach their territory. Either choice weakens European economic stability and political unity. The attack on Western Ukraine wasn't about conquering territory. It was about forcing NATO to militarize its eastern borders and drain resources, defending against a threat Putin can maintain indefinitely. Russia's recruitment crisis exposes the economic warfare behind Putin's strategy. With over 950,000 casualties, Russian forces are recruiting from prisons, homeless shelters, and even approaching football hooligans as expendable manpower. Putin doubled military bonuses to 400,000 rubles, 5 times Russia's average monthly wage. The Institute for the Study of War reports that Russia spent $25 billion on military recruitment in just the first half of 2025. Between January and June, federal and regional budgets allocated 400 billion rubles for enlistment bonuses alone. The Russian economy is burning the candle at both ends. But this unsustainable spending serves Putin's larger strategy. While Russia bankrupts itself recruiting soldiers, it forces NATO to spend even more on defense. Every Russian attack triggers massive Western military responses that cost far more than the original assault. The economic imbalance is staggering. Russia launches cheap drones that cost thousands of dollars each, while NATO responds with fighter jets that cost millions to operate. Putin trades Russian lives and rubles for Western dollars and euros at an exchange rate that favors his long-term strategy. But the breaking point approaches for both sides. Russia cannot indefinitely replace forces at current casualty rates without involuntary mobilization, which Putin refuses to order. Meanwhile, NATO cannot indefinitely fund maximum military readiness across multiple nations without economic consequences. Putin's gamble is that Russia's authoritarian system can sustain economic collapse longer than Western democracies can sustain military spending. The recruitment crisis suggests he might be wrong. The pattern of Russian attacks reveals Putin's true target. Analysis of strike locations shows systematic targeting of European energy infrastructure, transportation networks, and economic centers. Ukraine's power grid connects to European systems. Its grain exports feed global markets. Its transportation corridors link Europe to Asia. Every attack on Ukrainian infrastructure sends ripple effects across European markets. Energy prices spike, food costs rise, transportation routes close, refugee flows strain social services. Putin isn't just attacking Ukraine, he's attacking the economic foundation of European stability. But the revelation goes deeper. Russian attacks consistently target civilian infrastructure during key NATO meetings and European Union summits. The timing isn't coincidental. It's designed to influence Western political decisions through economic pressure and humanitarian crises. The July 21st attack came hours before high-level talks on weapons support for Ukraine. Putin's message was clear: every weapon you send will be answered with attacks that create economic and humanitarian costs for your own populations. But this strategy reveals Putin's fundamental weakness. He can only influence Western decisions through terror and economic disruption because he cannot win through conventional military means. The attacks on civilian targets are admissions of military failure, not demonstrations of strength. Putin's real invasion target, European economic and political stability, becomes obvious once you understand that Ukraine is just the weapon he's using to attack NATO's foundation. NATO's counter-strategy emerges from understanding Putin's real objectives. Germany and the United States immediately agreed to deliver 5 Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, with Germany prepared to pay for the fastest possible delivery. The alliance realizes it's not just supporting Ukraine, it's defending European democracy itself. The Ukraine Defense Contact Group of 50 Western allies accelerated weapons deliveries, and increased coordination. Britain committed £700 million for air defense and artillery ammunition this year alone. France allocated an additional €200 million for Ukraine's critical infrastructure and economy. But the strategic shift goes beyond weapons. NATO now treats attacks on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure as attacks on European stability. Every Russian strike that disrupts energy supplies or creates refugee flows is recognized as economic warfare against the entire alliance. The alliance's new approach focuses on making Putin's strategy too expensive to sustain. Advanced air defense systems reduce the success rate of Russian attacks while increasing their cost. Coordinated intelligence sharing allows NATO to anticipate and counter Russian operations more effectively. But most importantly, NATO now understands that defending Ukraine is defending Europe. The alliance stops treating this as a regional conflict and starts treating it as a direct threat to Western civilization. This shift in perspective changes everything about the strategic response. Putin's attempt to use Ukraine as a weapon against NATO has backfired by uniting the alliance around a common understanding of the threat they face. Putin's miscalculation becomes clear in NATO's unified response. Instead of dividing the alliance, attacks on civilian targets unite Europe against him. Instead of forcing NATO to reduce support for Ukraine, the attacks accelerate weapons deliveries and increase military cooperation. The French foreign minister's experience hiding during the Kyiv attack crystallizes European understanding of the threat. When European officials personally experience Russian attacks, they stop viewing this as Ukraine's war and start viewing it as Europe's war. But the strategic failure runs deeper. Putin's attacks on Western Ukraine, close to NATO borders, prove he's willing to risk direct confrontation with the alliance. This eliminates any remaining European reluctance to provide advanced weapon systems to Ukraine. The economic warfare backfires as well. While Putin hoped to bankrupt NATO through forced military spending, the alliance's coordinated response actually reduces costs through shared resources and improved efficiency. Meanwhile, Russia's unsustainable recruitment bonuses and military spending accelerate its own economic collapse. But the ultimate failure is political. Putin's strategy depended on dividing NATO and creating war fatigue in Western populations. Instead, attacks on civilian targets strengthened public support for Ukraine and increased political pressure for stronger responses to Russian aggression. Putin's real invasion target, European unity and economic stability, has been strengthened rather than weakened by his attacks. Ukraine becomes the shield protecting European democracy, and NATO emerges more unified than ever before. Putin's massive assault on Kyiv wasn't about conquering Ukrainian territory. It transformed Europe's understanding of the threat they face. The 426 drones and 24 missiles that lit up the night sky were weapons aimed at the heart of NATO itself, using Ukraine as the delivery system for an attack on Western democracy. The coordinated response from 4 NATO nations proved the alliance understood Putin's real strategy. Every scrambled fighter jet, every activated air defense system, every accelerated weapons delivery revealed that NATO finally recognized Ukraine as the shield protecting European civilization from Putin's economic and political warfare. But Putin's miscalculation runs deeper than failed military strategy. His attacks on civilian infrastructure have united NATO in ways decades of diplomacy never could. And the alliance's response suggests they're preparing for a confrontation that goes far beyond Ukraine's borders.